Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Oldish TV. My name's Karen, and as always, it is my pleasure to be your host today. And I am wondering how many of you take the time to indulge in a little self care. It's really not such an indulgence, it's really something that's quite necessary. I know I just had my first massage as they're coming back to work and opening up since COVID started, and I really feel kind of all put together again, and it feels really good. But, for a lot of us, that feeling of being frazzled and hyper busy and too busy to even have a second to go to the bathroom is a feeling we really don't like. And I know that for some people, it's a fleeting thing, but I also am very much aware that for others, it is how they live their lives. It is how they feel 24/7. It's particularly true of caregivers. So today, I want to take a look at how well we look after ourselves. Tell me if you look after yourself. Put a comment below and let me know what kind of self-care is your favorite go-to. And we'll take a look at those as we go through the show. It's something that women are more prone to needing than men. And I know that most of our audience is female. So that's really why we want to talk about this today. It's really important that we look after ourselves. We need to have the energy to look after everybody else. And, aren't we really always looking after everybody else? We're looking after our children, our jobs, our neighbors, our community, older relatives, friends. I mean, are you that go-to person that everybody wants to dump their problems on because you're a great listener and you can solve their problems? Well, maybe you are. You're caregiving. So it's important that you take that time to look after yourself and just relieve yourself of the stress. Most of us have part-time jobs, at least, if not full-time jobs. I know that for me, a lot of my friends who are retired are busier now that they're retired than they ever were when they were working for a paycheck. So we do have a way of filling up our days, filling up our time, and really not remembering to take time for ourselves. It's ever so important to do that. For most of us, the descent into not looking after ourselves starts the day our children are born. They are always wanting something, and we may have partners in this endeavor of child raising. At least they can feed themselves, bathe themselves, and dress themselves, even if they can't find the car keys. But, looking after children as they get older and older and start to develop their own lives and their own habits, and they're able to do more for themselves, our tendency usually is to fill up that space with other things. It could be that our parents are getting older, our grandparents need a hand, we take on a volunteer job in the community, or maybe we got that promotion at work that has more responsibility and we need that time to work on our job because we now have all of this responsibility. But again, if you don't take care of yourself, you won't have the energy and the capacity, physically, mentally, or emotionally, to do the very best you can with everybody else. I think a lot of us were raised in that generation where if we took time for ourselves, it was regarded as selfish. But life moves on and research moves on, and we now know how important it is to look after ourselves every single day. So, for a lot of you, um, that self-care business falls by the wayside because you don't know what to do. So I'm going to tell you. And even if you have, oh, hi, Ghislaine. How are you? Nice to see you here. This Ghislaine is one of our regular viewers, and it's so nice to see her and to have her comment. Let me know how you do self-care. That would be really interesting. And we'll take a look at some of them as we go through. But anyway, um, if you're caregiving for someone else, you may not have the time because I hear from a lot of people who are caregiving for people who literally cannot be left alone for a second. They just can't. They're a danger to themselves, or they don't know where to know. pardon me, they don't know where to find the bathroom if they're left unattended. So, it's really important that you have some tips and tricks to do for yourself, even in that situation. So, we're going to go through some things that you can do if you do have the time by yourself, some things that you can do if you only have a moment, and some things that you can do when you have somebody else with you. For instance, if you are caregiving for that person who can't be left alone, it is ever so important. So, you know, we do have a channel. I'll tell you that. Let me just put this on the crawl. TheOldish.com has a channel called Caregiver Central. You will find a lot of information there that you can go and look at, articles that you can read, data that you can look at. A lot of them do talk about self care. A lot of the articles do talk about how caregivers aren't necessarily okay, particularly in this pandemic. So, look after yourself. So, there are some chemicals in our brain that we can trigger that are really super helpful. And if you know what chemicals they are and how to trigger them, then you can figure out very quickly what you need to do to trigger the chemical that will benefit you in that moment that you're having in your life and you need a bit of self-care. So let's go through some of them. There are four. Dopamine is the first one. Now, that's the reward chemical. That's the one that feels like you're giving yourself a little pat on the back. And I think that more of us need to give ourselves a pat on the back. So, here's what I want you to do. You can choose from any of these. You can have these in your little toolkit. Reward yourself when you can acknowledge that you've done something well. Just take a moment and understand that that thing you just did was really good, that you did something for someone else, and that it's meaningful. Okay? Celebrate by eating a favorite food. I like that one. Just a favorite little snack, or prepare yourself a favorite dinner. Keep a list of the lovely things that people say about you. Now, a lot of you journal, whether you journal in paper or on a smartphone, just write it down, because I think too often, when somebody says something nice about us, our tendency is to downplay it, especially if you're Canadian. The tendency is to just downplay it and say, it wasn't anything. Don't worry about it. It was something, and somebody took the time to tell you that it was something. So write it down and remind yourself when you need that little boost, because it ends up being a collection of all of the good parts of you. And I think you need that. Pay attention to something that you typically do on autopilot. There are a lot of steps that you go through, and sometimes we just do things and we don't really think about it. Some of you who have watched the show for a while know that I'm doing a course in home modification. I just finished the third of 5 courses. I love it. I love every bit of it. And if you're interested in home modification, by the way, go over to our Facebook page, which is called Real Life Renos. And we're going to talk about the modifications you can do to your home. We're also going to talk about the modifications to your thinking, because you have to think about how you want to modify things before you know how to go ahead and do it. So anyway, real life renos. But anyway, one of the assignments that I had to do in my second course was write down every single step that it took to boil an egg. Sounds like a simple task, right? How many steps would you imagine there might be to boiling an egg? Now, when I say steps, I mean everything. You open the refrigerator, you locate the carton of eggs, you take the carton out. I mean, it's every single little step. 102 steps for me to do something as simple as boil an egg. We do a lot of stuff in a day, people. A lot of stuff. So, we need to pay attention to what we're doing and congratulate ourselves for doing it well. And if you don't do it well because you missed step number 67 in the 102 steps that it takes to boil an egg, then oh well, you got 101 steps. Celebrate the small stuff. Listening to music also triggers that particular dopamine chemical in our brain. as does helping someone else. So for caregivers, I know it seems strange to think about how that should trigger a chemical in your brain when you're just so busy and run off your feet, you don't even have time to go to the bathroom. But if you stop and think about it and acknowledge the fact that you are looking after someone else, that reward, even though it takes a lot of patience, that reward triggers that chemical in your brain. So balance that out and give yourself that. The act of self care, in and of itself, triggers dopamine. So you look after yourself and you're going to trigger that response. Another chemical is serotonin. Now, this is the mood stabilizer. So when you're angry or upset, you want to trigger serotonin in your mind. This is maybe an easy one to trigger. Sunshine. Walk out into the sunshine. Easy, right? In the wintertime, if there's not so much sun around, as there often isn't where I live, you can take vitamin D. It's not really the same thing as triggering that chemical in your brain by walking into sunshine. If you are caregiving someone and you can't go outside, for a moment, stand in the window where the sunshine is pouring in, or bring the person to whom you are giving care over to that window, and the two of you can sit there for a moment and you can both get some serotonin happening in your brain. Go out for a walk if you can, walking in nature, listening to the birds, watching the critters. I know there's a walk that I do with one of my daughters. It's a 5K walk, and part of it, most of it actually, goes through a nature preserve. And we've seen snakes and wild turkeys, and of course, butterflies and birds. What else do we see? Snails. I often see snails on the pathway, and do you do this? I do this. I pick them up and move them off the pathway because walking paths are a death trap for snails, and I kind of like those little critters. So I move them off the path in whatever direction they're going. Okay, if that sounds silly to some of you, well, it does, but that's what I do. I move snails. Swimming or cycling, that can also trigger serotonin in your mind. Now, more so than other exercises because swimming and cycling are very rhythmic. You get that rhythm going to where it's almost meditative. That triggers that chemical. Essential oils. Have you ever experimented with those? You know, you can go into a sage store, SAJE. You could call your local doTERRA rep. What is that? DOTERRA. You can read about essential oils online. I actually like essential oils and I find them very helpful. I have some diffusers. Here's one of them. This is one of my diffusers that I use. I have two or three around here. But I put some essential oils in there and it just mists out. When I'm feeling that I need to relax a bit, then that's what I do. Fixing broken relationships. Now, that may sound kind of odd, but think of it this way. If you are somebody who has a relationship that is broken and needs some TLC, one that you really care about putting back together again, then when you're thinking about it, you tend to think about all of the things that are wrong with it, all of the negatives, and you're putting negative energy into it. Think about it this way. If you fix it, you're crossing it off the list of things that you give negative energy to, and so that lifts your spirits. You can also look back on the process of putting that relationship back together again and celebrating that friendship or whatever the relationship happens to be. That triggers that chemical as well. Consistent good sleep. That's another thing that triggers serotonin. I just got myself a couple of new pillows and it really helps. It really helps. I have some friends who have been using melatonin, not consistently because you shouldn't do that, but they've been using melatonin on those nights when they feel that they've been a little too stressed in the day and they need a little help leveling out their sleep patterns. So it's a drug. Now remember that it's a drug. If you're somebody who uses melatonin, you have to be mindful of all of the other drugs that you take. Not all drugs are pharmaceuticals, so just be aware of that. Endorphins are painkillers. They're the ones that we want to trigger if we are feeling really pained by something or stressed. Now, by pain, I mean physical pain. You want to take your attention off of that and put it on to something else. But stress, that endorphin is the bad boy you want to unleash if you're feeling stressed. Here's what you do: do something that makes you laugh. Have you ever done laughing exercises? There are laughing videos on YouTube that are hilarious, and you cannot help but laugh. My go-to laugh inducer is going to YouTube and looking up old clips of the Carol Burnett show. Any of you remember that? Especially the clips that have Carol Burnett and Tim Conway. Oh my gosh, Tim Conway, hilarious. Harvey Korman, Lyle Waggoner. Do you remember all those people? I'm giving away my age, perhaps. I was a little girl, but you know, I really was. I was a little girl when that show was on. I was too young to stay up and watch it, but my mother used to let me stay up and watch her first little introduction. You know, when she would talk to everybody, she would come out and introduce the show and she'd take questions from the audience. I remember that so well, but then I had to go to bed. So I make do with the YouTube videos now. My goodness, it makes me laugh. Exercise will also do this for you, unleash those endorphins. Go for a walk, play tennis, do whatever exercise pleases you to release your stress. Unfollow or unfriend that person on Facebook that causes you stress every time their comments and posts come through your feed. Especially right now in the COVID environment, you don't need extra stress. You can unfollow someone without unfriending them, and they will never know that you've done that. All it means when you unfollow someone is that you won't see their posts. You can choose to go to their Facebook feed if you wish, just to check in and see how they're doing. But if that's somebody who gives you a lot of stress, just unfollow them. If they really give you stress, unfriend them. You don't need that in your life. Now, here are some things I really like. I like releasing endorphins because you can do it through having a massage, which I told you I just had. Dark chocolate. Dark chocolate releases endorphins. Go figure. Okay, not a lot of it because then you'll need more exercise, but for a different reason. But dark chocolate. Also, wine in moderation. I can get behind these endorphins because a massage, a bit of dark chocolate, and a glass of white wine takes all my stress away. I love it. Okay, the final hormone is oxytocin. Now, that is the love hormone. You've probably heard of that. You want to tickle this hormone when you want those happy feelings to come to the surface. Absolutely do that. Oxytocin is also thought to control inflammation and improve wound healing. Imagine, it's not called the love hormone for nothing. It also increases trust, so studies have shown, and it helps with social behavior and therefore romantic attachments. Well, I've told you I tend to be a bit of an introvert, so maybe I need to trigger some more of that oxytocin to help with that. I'm the one who will go to a party under much duress. I really have to think about it. I'll go to a party, but as soon as I walk in the room, I'm looking for the exits and trying to figure out how long I have to stay there. Maybe I need some more oxytocin. So I may have to do some of this. Play with a puppy. Okay, I can do that all day long. Or a baby. You can play with a baby too. It'll do the same thing. Give or get some hugs. Now, if you're a caregiver and you're looking after somebody who doesn't mind hugs, that's great. That'll benefit both of you. Give or get some hugs. If the time is right and the feeling is right, cuddle up for a bit. Just cuddle up on that couch and watch a comedy together. There you go. Two chemicals in one. Get your Marie Kondo on and declutter something because that feeling of satisfaction and freedom that you get when you get rid of stuff you no longer need triggers the love chemical. Yes, indeed it does. That feeling of accomplishment will make you feel like dancing. So you just definitely want to do that. Do something that makes yourself happy. Speaking of dancing, get a dance party on. I have a younger daughter who's always having dance parties at work. She does them at work, she does them at home. I know this because she tells me, and I've actually seen her do it. So, start a project that you've been imagining that will make you feel happy. Binge something on Netflix that will make you feel happy. It's that happiness stuff that sets the world aside and makes you feel happy. So there you go. There are my suggestions for feeling happy. Let's just take a look here. Hi, Kovila. How are you? Thanks for joining in our broadcast. I appreciate the fact that you've taken time to join us today. Ah, Ghislaine, you're a foodie. Yes, right. Food. The right food is the solution to everything. Yes. Turtles. Oh, you help turtles back to, yeah, they do hiss a lot. Yeah. I remember when my kids were a lot younger, I had my niece with me. I believe we were taking my niece back to rejoin her family, and there was a giant snapping turtle on the road, on the highway that we were on. Now I say highway, it's a two-lane highway. At the time, it wasn't terribly busy, so I stopped the car and I put my blinkers on and I got behind this turtle and walked him over, or her, don't know, walked it over to the other side of the road. And because I was behind and they're not really fast at turning their whole bodies around, I think they can turn their heads around really fast, but not their whole bodies. But I walked this turtle back over to the other side of the road in the direction that he or she was heading. And then we went on our way, and I was happy that I had done that, not because my children and my niece have never let me forget it, but because it wasn't too far down the road when we came upon some transport trucks and some other traffic that, the turtle surely would have been in the way. You're talking about Carol Burnett. Yes, yes, yes. Love Carol Burnett. Absolutely adore her. Her Tarzan yell, nobody did it like her. I don't think I'm necessarily a huge fan of the Tarzan yell, but oh my gosh, some of those comedy bits that they put together, and it was live TV. For those of you who are younger, TV used to be live. It's the way it was. That's when the show said it was starting at 9 o'clock, it started at 9 o'clock. And if they made mistakes, they made mistakes. It's just the way it went. Live TV. They tried to crack each other up. You remember that? Oh, oh well. This is triggering some endorphins even now. Okay, anyway, so I am going to leave you with all of that today, and thank you for joining me. I do hope that you find time to have some more self-care in your life. Really, it's important to have that time for yourself, even if you are with someone else, popping that piece of chocolate or finding something that you can laugh at together or dancing together. I mean, there are so many things you can do even if you can't find the time to be by yourself and have that nice long hot bath that so many of us want. Take care of yourselves. I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 12 noon on the Oldish TV. And until then, please do take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and do remember that it takes a village to age a senior. Bye, everybody.